Tonight, our main speaker is John. Help me welcome John.
My name is John. I'm an alcoholic. And when I couldn't get a hold of alcohol, I used whatever the hell I could get my hands on. Yeah, LSD, Benny's, all that stuff, yeah, before some of y'all were born. My sobriety date is September 19th, 1988, one day at a time. Yeah. And it's by the grace of a higher power. I give my higher power all the credit. I don't want to start taking credit because that's when I start fucking up. So, I give my higher power the credit. With those of you who care to, please join me in a serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thanks, Kirk, for asking me to speak. It's a privilege to be a speaker. The book, if I remember right, the book suggests we share in a general way what we were like, what happened, and what we're like now. And I'll give it my best shot. I was the knucklehead in the family. I was the mischief maker. Everybody else went to school, got good grades, graduated. I was busy fucking up, And that's how it was for me. I was uncomfortable in my own skin before I took a drink. Dysfunctional family. My family was dysfunctional before that word even came out, And I remember walking on eggshells. I remember trying to stay out of trouble, and I kept getting into trouble. I remember not liking my skin color. I remember wanting to be lighter. What else? I was afraid to talk to girls. I used to get in fights, lose most of them. I had a hell of a life, man. So when I took that first drink, I was about 9. And my father, his buddies were over at the house. And I was about 9 or 10. And he gave me a little paper cup full of beer. And I drank that beer. And I didn't like the taste, but one day I got a buzz. And I said, uh-oh, this is it. This is it. And man, I love that. I chased that buzz that I first got from then on. And the book talks about the effect produced by alcohol. And I love that. And so here I am, growing up. My mother and father worked. They kept a roof over our head. My father was a functioning drunk. My mother was an Al-Anon. I remember my mother going to Al-Anon many years ago. And me and my brother didn't get along. And I started hanging out. It's funny because the people I hung out with, they were like me. They were drunks. And when they were dope fiends too. And we thought that was what life was all about, getting high and having a good time, So I'm ditching school. I'm getting in trouble. I'm a teenager, and I'm going to court, and the judge is like, if I see you one more time, I'm going to put you away for a long time. So I left the courthouse, and I went about 4 blocks down the street to the recruiter's office. And I said, one of these branches are going to let me in. I don't care which one it was, even the Coast Guard, but one of them's going to let me in. And I got in. Man. And I'll never forget that. The recruiter tried to get me to sign up for 4 years. I said, no, I just take 2. And, I remember. And just before I joined the service, I said to myself, I'm going to get away from all these drunks. Yeah, I'm going to get away from all these drunks. And guess what happened? I get in the service, there's drunks all over the place. Drunks that know how to shoot, And it's like, but I fit right in. And I proceeded to drink, travel the world, get into trouble, captain's mass, learn another language. I mean, my whole world opened up when I joined the service. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it. There was some fun. There was some fun in the service, but there were some rough times too. There were some hard times. 12 of my buddies lost their life while I was in the service. I'm service-connected PTSD, and we had 47 injuries, and we had a collision. What happened is we had a collision with an aircraft carrier, you know. So you have a collision with a carrier, somebody's going to die. You know, I mean, it was bad. And I'll never forget that. I still have nightmares about it. So if there's any are there any veterans? There's a couple of veterans here. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. You know, thank you for your service. Thank you. And I'm grateful to be alive, man. I really am. When I was drinking, I didn't think I was going to survive. I was drinking, I was getting into trouble, I didn't know what was going to happen next. I was hanging around the wrong kind of people. And it's funny because my mother and father raised me to be responsible and accountable. They did not raise me to be a knucklehead. But, we do what the heck we want to do, right? So here I am in the service. I get out. I get an honorable discharge. I was really surprised I got an honorable, I was really surprised, And I got out and I picked up right up where I left off. I started to pursue all the things that you go for when you're young and you're working. You want things in life. I wanted the house, I wanted the wife, I wanted the truck, I wanted the car, I wanted the dog, I wanted to raise a family, all that stuff. And I pursued that. I pursued it. But King Alcohol, the disease of alcohol, the alcoholism, up here, in between my ears, it kicked in. And the things I was raised to believe in, the things I was raised to take care of, slowly slipped right out the window. Alcoholism's like a snake. It just eases into your life, real slow. You don't even notice. You're too busy doing your thing. And I almost died. I ended up in the VA. I was in 257C. Back then, they were doing the Thorazine Shuffle. Anybody know about the Thorazine Shuffle? And they assigned us to a shrink. They assigned us to a counselor. H&I would come see us, hospitals and institutions. They would tell their story. Even some of my relatives would come see me, the ones that would still have anything to do with me. I think they were Al-Anon. And on the 28th day, my mind said, from now on, we'll just drink beer. And Bill Wilson talks about it, the insidious insanity before the first drink, restless, irritable, and discontent. And I took that first, when I left that place, I took that first drink, and the physical allergy kicked in, and I picked right up where I left off. And man, it was holy hell. There was no more fun. It was hell, And I was a low bottom, but I found out you don't have to be a low bottom to get this program. I've talked to people who still have houses, who still have wives, that get this program. So you don't have to be a low bottom. Just listen to my story and you'll be like, hey, I'll take this program. After listening to his story, this program is the way to go, Because I went through hell. I put myself through hell. I put my family through hell. I'm not proud of it. I got to tell you about it because that's how I deal with my pain, So I went back to the VA, and I stayed. I said to myself, I'd rather stay in the VA as opposed to being back out on the streets. And they said, don't worry about it. We're going to help you. There were people in the VA that were sober that were working for the VA, and then there were people that were alumni that would come back to the VA and tell their story, And I remember, and Dr. Bob Smith talks about this, planting the seed. Somebody in AA had planted the seed before I checked into the VA for the last time. And I stayed in that VA. My mouth is getting dry. Can I have that water, please? Thank you. Your pitch was good, man. Your pitch was good. Yeah. I appreciate that. Yeah. All we got is today, You never know who might share something that'll save your ass. That's how I feel about it. So here I am in the VA, afraid to leave and afraid to stay. uncomfortable in my own skin. I had a gut full of anger, rage, fear, crazy thoughts. I didn't know what I was going to do. The courts had sent me there, so if I left the VA, I was going straight to jail. Haven't been to prison, not yet. I've been to the county, haven't been to prison. So here I am in the VA, and I stayed. Even though my mind said, man, get the hell out of here, I stayed. And I had so much, I didn't know what I was going to do. So I started watching you guys, the AA members that were here when I got here. I started watching you. And I started listening to you as best I could. Sometimes I could hear you, sometimes I couldn't, because sometimes you would share, you'd be talking, and my mind would just drift off. You know, my mind would be in Africa with 5 wives. You know, all of a sudden, my mind was just drift off. You know, so for me to sit still for a whole meeting, and you know, because back in those days the meetings were full of cigarette smoke. The old timers swore. It was normal to swear back then. You know, people didn't get it. There was so many people. It was normal, and they used to go on a lot of 12-step calls. And the worse the drunk was, the better you felt. The worse he smelled, you know, if he had puke on him, if you took him, you know, if you had to take him to a detox, or maybe you let him sleep on your couch, maybe, or you took him to a treatment center, you know, 12-stepping drunks was the way to go. I saw the old timers doing that, and I thought they were getting paid. I didn't. I said, man, what's in it? What's in it for them? Why are they so busy doing service work? You know, what's the angle? You know, and I found out later, you got to give it away to keep it. You know, if you want to stay sober, you got to work with other alcoholics. Now, people do what they want to do, right? But these are the things that I've learned. These are the things that I've learned over the years. There's a power greater than me doing for me what I can't do for myself, even as I stand here and speak. I want to make that clear. There's a higher power that's saving my ass right now. And talking to you guys is a privilege. So I'm in the VA. They say, go to a sober living. I go to a sober living. You know, I just started following directions. You know, I just started taking suggestions. I was afraid not to do what you suggested. I'm in the sober living. They got these, there's a couple of old timers named Joe and Charlie back then. And they were playing these Joe and Charlie tapes. And they would play those damn tapes all the time, you know, at the VA. And Joe and Charlie was talking about the disease of alcoholism. They was talking about the history of AA. They were talking about the big book. They were talking about their own experiences, you know. And Joe used to talk about the history of AA, how when AA first started, women and blacks wasn't even allowed in meetings, you know. So Joe took the focus off of that, and he got the focus on alcoholism. He talked about the disease, dis-ease, restless, irritable, and discontent. And I'll never forget that, because that helped me. It was like, because I didn't know what the problem was. I thought the problem was my old lady nags too much, my boss is a prick, you know, I don't have enough education. You know, I found out the problem is alcoholism, you know, spiritual malady, you know. So in the sober living, out of the VA, going to meetings, didn't have a car, sold my car to the dope dealer, so I had no car. And so they said, well, ride the bus to a meeting. The old timers were cruel. They were shrewd back then. They just talked to you. You know, they didn't sugarcoat nothing. Ride the bus to a meeting. Get to a meeting, we'll see that you get home. And I was like, oh boy, you know, but I got to the meeting. And back in those days, they used to say stuff like, you walk in the meeting, they were like, are you new? Yeah, sit in the front. You know. Now, you didn't have to do what the old timers suggested, but the old timers knew how to stay sober. Excuse me. I was new, so I'm learning how to stay sober. I'm just beginning. I'm learning how to go through a day without drinking. I'm learning how to get through those feelings in your gut without drinking, you know, or the crazy thoughts. So I'm going to meetings. And if I went to a meeting that had cookies and donuts, I thought I was in a rich meeting. It was like, damn, cookies and donuts, you know? I thought this was a hell of a meeting. And there was a guy that used to come to the Marina Center in California. He used to sleep in the back in the bushes, and his name was Jimmy. And Jimmy, he used to wear his house on his back. He smelled like crap, And Jimmy, hair was all long and scraggly. His teeth were yellow. He'd curse you out, tell you to go, go you know where. And Jimmy was in and out of meetings. The old timers would let him stay. They put him out. They let him stay, put him out. And Jimmy used to sit in the back of the meeting. And our meetings, some of our meetings were an hour and a half, some were an hour. Jimmy would sit in the back of the meeting. Now, he smelled terrible. The whole room smelled bad. And Jimmy would sit in the back of the meeting, and the whole meeting Jimmy would do, he would say, fuck you, 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 for the whole meeting. I was like, damn, I said to myself, Jimmy will never get sober. That's what I thought. Jimmy will never get sober. And the old timers would let him say sometimes they'd put him out. And he would piss me off because he would eat up all the donuts and drink the coffee, And I'm looking at Jimmy like, God, look at Jimmy. I'm doing great compared to Jimmy. Well, I go to this same meeting about 4 months later. And it's one of those meetings that have a greeter, and you wait in line to get in. And there's a greeter at the front door. He's got a suit on, nice looking fellow. And Jimmy, I didn't know it was Jimmy. And I'm walking up, I'm looking, and the guy's beard trimmed, eyes are nice and clear. He's shaking hands, and I get a little closer, and I say to myself, is that Jimmy? No. And I get a little closer, we're getting into the meeting, and I get close enough, and I recognize him, and it's like, damn, that's Jimmy. That of all people, that's Jimmy, and I was blown away. I was reminded that anybody can get sober. Anybody can get sober, and Jimmy. I'll never forget him. I thought he was a goner. I thought he was done. Didn't think he was going to get sober, and he did. And that Marina Center, I got my foundation in the Marina Center. In the Marina Center, they put you to work. They didn't try to force you to do anything, but what they looked for was desperation. Are you desperate for this program? Are you, do you want this freaking program? Do you want it? And it was like if they noticed that you wanted this program, they'd go out of their way to help you. They really would. They bust their ass to help you if they felt that you really wanted this program. And I learned how to be a secretary. I learned how to make coffee. Now, in the service, we didn't care if you know how to make coffee or not. Just go make coffee, And, because we knew it was going to be thick enough to build a brick wall with anyway, So I learned how to make coffee. I learned how to pass out chips when it's time to do chips. I learned about sitting in the front so you can hear the speaker, because not every meeting could afford a mic. So the best thing to do, I learned, was to sit in the front so you could hear the speaker. I learned about being a greeter. I learned about cleaning up after cleaning up cigarette butts. So please clean up your cigarette. Oh, you're doing vape now. There ain't most of we got vapors now. I don't know what you do about vaping. Yeah. That came out after my time. But we used to clean up cigarette butts, and my sponsor I had a sponsor that would hang out with me. My sponsor would take me to meetings. My sponsor taught me traditions. My sponsor eventually took me to the steps. So I got my foundation in the Marina Center. I had a sponsor. Didn't really want a sponsor because my sponsor wouldn't co-sign my BS, right? So I didn't care for that, But I hung in there anyway. And I remember at the park with my sponsor, I did my fourth step. I'll go back a little further. I think you'll get a kick out of this. I'm at my sponsor's apartment. And my sponsor said, write on step 1 and write on step 2. And I said, all right. I went and wrote on step 1 and step 2. Went back to my sponsor's house, and I read it to him. And I'm like, yeah, look at me, you know. I'm going to show him what the steps are about. And I read to him, and he looks at me and says, you got reservations. Oh, man. See, sponsors been down the road that we're going down. They already been down that road. If it's a sponsor that knows what, you know, if he knows the program. And he said, and then he pointed to the big book, and he talked about his experience with the steps. And I just listened. I didn't have any yeah buts, nah, no more yeah buts. I know. I was out of I knows. And I just sat there and listened. And he took me into the third step, and we did the third step prayer on our knees. And he said, okay, now get started on your fourth step. And he said, if you need help, I'll help you. And I had my papers ready for the fourth step, you know. And I remember driving home. I was working on my fourth step. I just started. And I felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulders already. And I was just getting started on my fourth step. And I just continued on with the program. You know, this program, it's my experience. This program really does work. So I hung in there. I got into a relationship, love in the treatment center, you know, got into a relationship. It was crazy, you know. We're still friends, though, years later. We're no longer together, but, you know, we're still friends. We respect each other. If I really need to talk to somebody, I can talk to her. You know, that's another thing about AA. You never know who you're going to have to talk to, you know, because the disease doesn't send out a memo when it's going to show up. The disease doesn't say, hey, buddy, I'm on my way to fuck up your life. The disease just, boom, it's there. So if you don't have a higher power, you're in trouble. Yeah. If I don't have a higher power, I'll put it like that. If I don't have a higher power today, not yesterday or tomorrow, but right now, if I don't have a higher power to stand between me and that first drink. You know, some of you heard about people committing suicide sober, and without a drink, I mean, you know. So this disease is no joke. We have a lot of fun in these rooms. Speaking of fun, you know, I found out that I could have a good time sober. We used to go to sober dances. I didn't think I could have fun sober. And I would watch people in these sober parties, and they're dancing and carrying on, and it's like, wow, they're having fun sober. Because I'm used to being loaded and having a good time. So, you know, now if you can take it or leave it, if you can drink or use and take it or leave it, my hat's off to you, like the book says. I just know that I can't do it. You know, see, that's what I've learned. If you're here to get the heat off, I understand. So I'm going through the steps. I'm going to meetings. I was in a relationship. I had a home group. My emotions, I'm getting some relief from the steps. But since I'm new, I'm in my first few years, I'm still having those ups and downs, you know. So they put me, I'm thankful that my sponsor was into service work, because service work helped save my life, like I was talking about earlier. Being a service, working with somebody, if you have trouble being grateful, if you have one of those days where you just don't give a damn, you know, it's like, what's the use anyhow? Try working with a newcomer. Try talking to another alcoholic. Now, I'm an alcoholic and an addict. The old timers, if you got to the podium back when I got sober, and if you said I'm an alcoholic and an addict, the old timers would say, hey, wait a minute. Are you an alcoholic? You know, some of the old timers were like that. Not all of them, some of them. They didn't play around. But what they told me was, okay, here's what we suggest, John. Go to some other meetings. Go to Cocaine Anonymous. Go to NA. Make sure that whatever your history is, make sure you're aware of it. Whatever your history is, make sure you're aware of it. Go all the way back to your childhood. They used to tell me stuff like that. Go all the way back to your childhood. Take a look at that first drink. They used to also tell me, take a look at that last drink too. Excuse me. Thank you. And so when you spend a lot of time working on yourself, man, it's a trip. Because some things you discover about yourself you like. And then some things you discover about yourself probably you're not going to like. It might piss you off. So talking to people like you and the rest of you, talking to somebody, and when you talk to somebody, you look for somebody that's sincere, right? But sometimes you have to get something off your chest, and you can't be real picky about who to talk to. You got to get it off your chest. You might pray, you might believe in a higher power, and that might help. But nothing helps, like the big book says, nothing helps like one alcoholic talking to another. Nothing works better than that. So if you're here tonight, one thing I suggest you do is get phone numbers. Now, when I got sober, there was no pagers, there were no smartphones, there were no portable video games, none of that stuff. If you had a car back then, it was probably an AA bucket. And so we would spend a lot of time just hanging out with each other. We would have somebody would maybe have play cards after the meeting, like the Alano Club. They might play dominoes after the meeting. They might play cards after the meeting, or somebody might have something going on at their house. I remember one dude, he would have a fish fry over at his place. Oh, by the way, my girlfriend just celebrated 22 years sober. Yeah. Thank you. She just celebrated 20. I'm proud of her. She's good people. It's my higher power. It's my higher power that put that woman in my life. It really is. I try to sponsor her sometimes, but it doesn't work. But she's good people. I'm glad she's in my life. We're still getting to know each other, but we're doing pretty good. It's the higher power. And the steps. Definitely the steps. Can't beat the steps. So where was I? Anybody remember? Fish fry. Where? Fish fry. Yeah, thank you. Yes. We would have fish fries, and there would be a bunch of us at this person's apartment, and we're just having a good time. We're eating. You eat as much as you can. I mean, we're sitting around talking and joking, and I'm doing this sober. I'm doing it sober. So you're learning how to stay sober. You're finding out. You're discovering, wow, it's okay to be sober. So now some are sicker than others, right? And you're only as sick as your secrets. So some people have to get therapy. I'm one of those that had to get therapy. I go to the VA and I get professional help. Not everybody has to do that. Like the book says, there are some people who are entirely normal in every respect except for the effect produced by alcohol. Okay? I had to find out who I was and what's going on with me. What makes me tick? Not what makes you tick. What makes me tick? So I can have some peace. And do you know, one day at a time, I'm still working on me. I'm still learning about me. My life is good, though. I own property. I'm retired. I got a good woman. As far as I can tell, she's great. She hasn't given me a reason to believe anything else. My family, well, that's a different story, my family. I pray for my family because my family owes me nothing. My family owes me nothing. And I don't owe them anything because I've made my amends and I've made my financial restitution. And I've made it a point to be there for my family if the crap hits the fan. I made it a point to be there for them. So every now and then I'll call them to see how they're doing. Some of my family I talk to, some of them I don't talk to. Sometimes I go to the family get together, sometimes I don't. I have to go according to what's going on in my gut. I know that I don't have to be a people pleaser today. I don't have to be anybody's doormat. Let me see. I'm learning about codependency. Because I'm in a relationship, I go to Al-Anon sometimes. I go to Al-Anon pretty regular nowadays, and it really does help, you know. So, thus we grow. You know, if you hang around here one day at a time, man, they used to say, if you apply this program to your life will get better beyond your wildest drunken dreams. And that's true. That's true. Let's see, I suggest you get a home group. I suggest you get involved in AA. If you can't read, we got the big book on CD. So don't even worry. You know, don't sweat it. You know, make a lot of meetings. Meeting makers make it. They really do. Most of the people that I see get in trouble in AA, serious trouble, like their mind really starts messing with them, are people who never took the steps, people who never found a higher power greater than themselves who can do for them what they could not do for themselves, people who do not do 12-step work. They do not get involved in helping others. So, see, because I had all these, when I remember, and even still to this day, I remember, oh man, I'm sober now. I want to do this, and I want to have that, and I want to go back to school, and I want to do this. And an old timer told me, he said, put AA first, and everything else will take care of itself. You know. So, and I didn't get AA the first time I came around. I'm a retread. That's a street term. It's somebody who's been in and out of the program. You know, but the day came when I wanted what this program had to offer more than I wanted anything else. And that's how I feel today. You know, it's funny, after 31 years sober and speaking at meetings, I still get nervous. And that's all right, you know, because once I get going, you know, it's on then, you know, once I get going. But I see familiar faces here. Kurt, friend of mine's, good dude. You know, he asked me to come speak. You know, and by the way, you guys are doing more for me than what I'm doing for you. Because when I share my story with you, it's a privilege. Like I said earlier, it's a privilege for me to get up here and share my story. It really is. So one day at a time, you're helping me to I don't even know how to say it. You're helping me to save my own ass. One day at a time. Got to give it away to keep it. I got a call from central office one day, 12-step call. There's an old timer who's handicapped, disabled, wants a ride to a meeting. I go to pick up the old timer. I'm in my pickup truck. I go to pick up the old timer. I find him. He's got a newcomer with him. I'm like, where'd he find this newcomer? This is a senior housing apartment. Who cares? Come on, man. We're all going to it. We leave an hour before the meeting. We hang out together. We talk. We have a good time. We're talking trash. We're waiting for the meeting to start. We're having a good time, all three of us. We stay for the meeting, hour-and-a-half meeting, speaker meeting. And then after the meeting, we hang out together for a while, maybe an hour. I don't even know how long, maybe an hour, 2 hours maybe. And I got me a couple of new friends, just like that, you know. Let me see. 12-step calls. Whatever you do, get involved in 12-step work. H&I, if you want to, if you want the program, you know, get involved. I'm from Pasadena, California. The damn rent is so high, it's ridiculous. But I'll stay out of politics, you know. But I'm out here in Prescott now. Prescott. The hillbillies tell me Prescott, you know. Okay, Prescott. So when I say Prescott, they don't know how long I've been out here, you know. But if you say Prescott, they know you're new, you know. So, but I like it here. And I'm one of the few soul brothers you're going to see out here, you know. But I like it out here, you know. Because most of the time, see, the way I was raised, my family, they would say hello to people. And I got that in me. I say hello to people. No big deal. How you doing? I'm fine. How are you? You know. Sometimes somebody asks me how I'm doing, and I'll say I'm taking it one day at a time. You know. I'm using AA code, but they don't even know it, you know. But, you know, I've got friends out here. I go down to the square, and I go for walks. My doctor told me to keep my cholesterol in check, so I go for walks. I got to watch what I eat. You know, I'm at that age where I got to take care of myself. You know, don't get too stressed out about nothing. Well, you never want to do that, but especially when you get older. So I got to watch my blood pressure. So I've had to change my diet. And I've never been good at self-discipline. It's really been a lot of work involved in discipline. But I'm learning. I'm getting better. See, the higher power is doing for me what I can't do for myself. I don't plan on moving. I used to live in Flagstaff. Yeah, I used to live in Flag. And, can you imagine going to a meeting in Flag, 3 foot of snow outside, cold as it can be, and, you just need to get to a meeting? I didn't let anything stop me from getting high. So I don't let nothing stop me from getting to a meeting. Either I'm going to walk, ride a bicycle, I'm going to take the bus, drive my car. Somehow I'm getting to that, call somebody. Somehow I'm getting to that meeting. And another thing you guys taught me when I was new, if you can't find a meeting, you can start a meeting. You can get a big, just like they used to say, if you don't like this meeting, get a big book and a coffee pot and start your own meeting. They used to say stuff like that. So my life is AA. So I heard some people say, oh, I don't have a life now because all I do is go to meetings. Well, because you're sober and because you go to meetings, you have a life because you have opportunities to do other things. You want to get married. You want to get back in good graces with your family. You want peace of mind. Maybe you just want peace of mind. You can find that in this program. So I was driving from Flagstaff down to Prescott to go to the VA to see some doctor. And I would drive through Prescott, and it was like, wow, this is a nice city. This is a beautiful city. 6 months later, I'm living here. This is my home now, And every now and then, I go back up to Flag to visit my old friends. Because I used to stay in a senior complex, right? There's a lot of drama in that senior complex. A lot of drama. You weren't bored. You were not bored. And every now and then, I'll go back up there to visit them. We started a meeting in that senior complex. Yeah, we started a meeting up there. Now, I don't know if the meeting's still going. But, it gave me something to do. It helped keep me out of trouble. I don't know about anybody else. And so I have friends now. And I have friends and I have relatives. I got nephews that have never seen me drunk. I got nieces that have never seen me drunk. I have a daughter who's 32, and I haven't seen her since she was a baby. And it's a direct result of my alcohol and drug abuse. I was getting high and screwing up so bad, my old lady at the time said, to hell with this, I'm out of here. And she left and took our daughter. And I haven't seen her since. I talked to him one time on the phone about 28 years ago, and I made what amends I could at that time. But because I chose liquor and alcohol over my family, I haven't seen my daughter in over 30 years. And I feel bad about that. But my sponsor says, he asked me, have you done everything you can to get back in touch with him and make an amends? Yes. Okay. He said, it's in God's hands now. Just pray about it, leave it to the higher power. So maybe your family will come back, maybe they won't. But you don't have to get drunk. You don't have to get high. And that's all I got.